During the COVID-19 pandemic, I was on duty and I heard that a colleague of mine was going to be admitted to the ICU, right? He is an anesthesiologist too, because he had prolonged fever that wasn't breaking. And at that moment, I sent him a message like that. Look, I will pray here for you. And that fever of yours will break, and they won't have to take you to the ICU. Don't worry. This happened within 5 minutes. It was not too much of a painful wait. Just 5 minutes, and then, after passing this short period, he writes, right after the message I sent him, that the fever had inexplicably ceased, and then they didn't need to take him to the ICU. I said, look, what power is this? My name is Jose Renato Carneiro. I am a doctor within medicine, specialized in anesthesia. And before Jesus, I was already his son. And he already knew that, as he always knew. But I was looking for him because I didn't know him. I lived next door to a Catholic church. My family, my parents are Catholic, both maternal and paternal. And my relationship with Catholic Church was always a relationship. Because my parents didn't make me go to Mass. But there was a Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock in the morning, which was promoted to children. And my presence there in the church, when I went there, I felt there was always in me a distrust, if God really dwelled in that place. And the repetition of facts and things that happen during the Mass, the repetition was not well received. Somehow I knew God could be present. And the way I interpreted that he was present was never through the words that the shared with everyone, but during the time of songs, right? How can I say, of the worship? It was at this time that I identified the presence of God. And a presence that is not an external presence, but an internal presence. That presence, it transformed. It made a certain boil in my heart. And it promoted the accumulation of tears in my eyes, right? I was a child. And what was missing for me to be able intensely, at all times, at every moment, identify the presence of God, was not only to recognize him through emotions and feel his fervor in my heart. It was also identifying him in the Word. The Word that I recommend everyone to listen to. Because God speaks all the time. The Word that is inside the Bible. But I had some resistance to the reading of the Bible. Because I thought the reading the Bible did not add to this understanding. I suffered for a long time this type of stillness. And I suffered through questions, right? Internal questions with myself. From the moment I devoted myself more to listen to him through the Word. Reading posts my wife published on social media. I identified that there existed a content, a word, a message. It was God speaking through her and using her to inform me that He really existed, and that it was not just a certain emotion. I was very skeptical for many years. I questioned things a lot. They were doubts, and the only, in my opinion, doctrine that doesn't raise any questions for me. It's when God speaks to me, and God speaks. God talks to me, Himself. God speaks to me through other people. And this is the important moment. It is the moment when you identify with this necessary peace. In order to be able to continue, to go where everyone one day will be there, and not in the possibilities of making an error. So these are questions that make me today not get troubled. Not to walk in tortuous paths. Was there any point in your life in which there was a major revelation, where there was a turning point, a change? There was a moment during my journey in search of God that, yes, there was a real identification with Him. And now I'm saying it like a doctor, not as a person giving a personal testimony, but with effects on my medical activity. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I was on duty and I heard that, and a colleague of mine was going to be admitted to the ICU, right? He is an anesthesiologist too, because his fever isn't breaking. And at that moment, I talked to my wife about what was going on. And I sent him a message like that. Look, I will pray here for you. And that fever of yours, it will break. And they won't have to take you to the ICU. Don't worry. This happened within 5 minutes. It was not too much of a painful wait. Just 5 minutes. And then, after passing this short period, he writes right after the message I sent him that the fever had inexplicably ceased, and they didn't need to take him to ICU. I said, look, what power is this? People have to understand that the power is His. We are just an instrument. What has changed in your life, Renato, after you met, and you had this greater experience with God? So, from the moment we have an intimate relationship with God, what happens is that the devil is defeated. Then that little voice that sometimes gets to bother us, and that bring us a lack of meaning in several situations. Setting a better example. Sick people want to commit suicide. And here comes that little voice, right? I imagine that, in the minds of people who are going through problems. I'm going to throw myself off this bridge. Then this little voice disappears. Because it's just invoking the name of Jesus, of God. That would suddenly make the devil fall to the ground and be defeated. And this gives us a carpet, a floor to step on. And we can certainly walk in peace. So from the moment that Jesus enters anyone's life as He got into mine, everything changes, both in the personal aspect of the feeling of accomplishment, Everything changes in relation to parents.
aos pais,
Everything changes in relation to the children. And what we consider immutable,
imutável,
as if it were an immutable clause,
cláusula pétrea,
disappears. Because he is the Lord of the impossible.
possíveis.
What would you say, Renato? For people who want to approach God and don't know how, the first thing I would say to these people
Essas pessoas
who are still looking for God,
à procura de Deus não
you don't need to go very far.
muito longe.
Just wanting to
Querer abrir
open yourself and let him get in. You don't need to go very far at all.
dentro de você.
There, inside you,
Procure ele,
look for him.
procure ouvir,
Search to listen to him. Use one of your senses to detect his presence.
para detectar a presença. Ele
He is present. If you still get suspicious
confiado que
that he is not there, go to the word, and he will tell you out loud.
voz alta
And you will hear,